Good morning, witches! Today I am super excited because we are going to have a conversation all about the first holiday on the Wheel of the Year in 2023, and that is Imbolc. Now, I have definitely talked about this in the past, but just like my full moon and new moon videos, I really wanted to put a lot more detail and attention into this video. And also, this is kind of like a way for me to create, my own grimoire pages. So, and as we go through the Wheel of the Year, I'm going to be adding to my own personal journal, so stay tuned for that. Now, the Wheel of the Year, as I just said, if you guys are not aware, the Wheel of the Year is a series of 8 holidays that are popularized by Wicca, but are observed by neo-pagans all over the world. And Imbolc is the first holiday that we see in the calendar year of 2023. Now, what is this holiday? What am I talking about? Now, Imbolc is a cross-quarter festival that used to mark the beginning of spring for ancient Celtic people. Though, as modern practitioners and modern people, generally we see the spring equinox as the first day of spring, right? Cross-quarter days are holidays on the Wheel of the Year that do not align with any sort of astrological or astronomical event, meaning they fall in between 2 of them. So, for example, Imbolc falls between the winter solstice and the spring equinox, meaning that, if we took a circle and we split it into 8, there would be kind of one that cuts it into quarters and then one that cuts it crosswise, right? So, the holidays that are not associated with a solstice or an equinox are called cross-quarter days, and Imbolc is one of them. Now, Imbolc, like many pagan holidays, are really about the season and less about the date. So, generally speaking, the calendar date that Imbolc is celebrated in modern times is on February 1st. Now, I do celebrate on February 1st. I always have. It's just kind of a tradition for me. However, there are some pagans who prefer to observe the astronomical date, which can fall anywhere between the 2nd and the 7th of February. So that is the exact time that we are completely between the solstice and the equinox. It's the exact halfway point. But again, I tend to celebrate on February 1st, and a lot of pagans tend to celebrate on February 1st, but it's all about the season. So don't stress yourself too much if you are busy on the 1st. It's all good. Now, Imbolc, which is a very difficult word for me to say because I try to go with the, more traditional Irish pronunciation. I have a lot of amazing Irish, viewers and, friends and stuff who really helped me with that, but I'm so worried that, my dumb American accent is just totally ruining it. So, to my Irish friends, I am so sorry. But this word really means in the belly, and it's kind of a reference to fertility and the beginning, of the birthing time for sheep. It could also be called Imbolc with a G at the end, or Oimelc, which is spelled O-I-M-E-L-C. Though regardless of what you call it, it is all referring to this same holiday that, was celebrated late in winter time when female sheep first start producing milk when they're pregnant, right? Now, we see reference to this actually, which is really cool, in the Cattle Raid of Cooley, which is part of the Ulster cycle in Irish mythology. If you guys haven't read it, I very much recommend it. It's awesome. This story dates back to the 7th century at least, because that's really when Christian monks started writing everything down, and that's how we have it preserved today. But there are definitely historical roots to this holiday. However, as with many pagan holidays, because this is a reconstruction based on old text, it's very likely that we celebrate things a little bit differently than our ancestors, and that is a-okay. So I just want to make sure people are okay with that. Now, Imbolc is also known as Saint Brigid's Day, or a feast day for the goddess Brigid. There are some ways, I believe I'm saying that in the American way, some people pronounce it as Brigid, so I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly. Now, I basically could do an entire video on this deity, as she has a vast mythology and is very important to Celtic practitioners. However, in relation to the topic at hand, we're just going to talk about Brigid in conjunction with Imbolc, right? So Brigid is a Celtic goddess associated with fire, the sun, springtime, creativity, smithing, poetry, and childbirth or midwifery. As Christianity really rose to prominence throughout Western Europe, Brigid was syncretized into Saint Brigid, right? And early Christians celebrated Candlemas around the time that Imbolc was historically celebrated. Though they are similar, I think it is important to kind of distinguish the Christian holiday from the pagan one, as they are kind of about two different things. However, I think it's really cool to see how pagan traditions endured and, transformed in order to survive. And I'm really, really grateful to all of the ancestors who kept those traditions alive. So there is definitely a lot of syncretization, and I think that this is one of the best examples of it, with Brigid being Saint Brigid. And we can really see how, Christianity and existing pagan practices kind of melded and, were syncretized into one another, right? Now here's a super good quote about the similarities between the Feast of Imbolc and the Feast of St. Brigid. Now, this comes from a book, the Journal of Royal Societies of Antiquaries of Ireland, which was published in 1945, so it's a little bit old-timey, but the main significance of the Feast of Brigid would seem to be that it was a Christianization of one of the focal points of the agricultural year in Ireland, the starting point of preparations for the spring sowing. Every manifestation of the cult of the saint, or the deity that she replaced, is closely bound up in some way with food production, and this must be the chief line of approach to a study of the spring festival. So even back then, pagans loved to eat, and what can I say? I'm really glad that has survived on till today. Now, I know that not all witches who honor the Wheel of the Year do so in a religious sense, in that they may not work with Brigid or the Celtic pantheon, and that is absolutely okay to focus on the more secular aspects of this holiday, but I would encourage you to learn more about Brigid and, the significance of Imbolc as a way to honor the season and remember the original figure behind the holiday, because I think it's important to, study and remember that and, keep, know the significance of the holiday, but I also understand that it may not be, something that you connect with in a more religious or pagan way. So Imbolc is a fantastic time to remember that spring is soon to be here, and it's a time to start to kind of stretch your limbs, to expand and awaken. This is also a great reminder that it is never too late to start your New Year's resolutions. I remember chatting last year about how many pagans set New Year's resolutions on Samhain or even Yule, but I feel as though Imbolc would also be a great time to do this. And I would even say one of the last times to do this in terms of intention setting on a spiritually significant day for the year ahead, right? Now, let's start talking about some correspondences. So now that I have ranted at you for 20 minutes about Imbolc, let's get into some of the correspondences, the intentions, and ways you can celebrate this holiday, right? Now, a lot of this information comes from the Peculiar Brunette, who has a fantastic source all about the holidays. I'm going to link it down below. She has them for every single holiday, and they are great quick reference guides for correspondences and all sorts of good stuff like that. So that was a great source for this video. All right, so let's touch on some of the areas you can focus on for celebrating Imbolc. So things that are associated with Imbolc include, introspection, new beginnings, patience, renewal, transformation, healing, awakening. That is definitely the big word for me. And also personal development, purity, and cleansing. Now, as that quote said, it is incredibly important to talk about all of the food. New colors first. Now, for some of my friends who may not be able to openly celebrate this holiday, I really love color magic. So if you can incorporate some of the following colors into your wardrobe, or maybe into your space, or maybe use them to create some art, whatever that looks like for you, I encourage you to do so. I encourage you to use soft pastel colors such as light yellows, whites, silvers, light greens, kind of soft pinks. I would encourage you to think of anything that you would first see think of those first flowers of spring, those really delicate colors. Some foods and drinks that are associated with this holiday, because again, it's a pagan holiday, there has to be food, right? Those things include root vegetables, fermented foods, grain, but primarily the big focus of Imbolc is dairy and butter. So if you're like me, I love butter, it's so good. I made my own butter last year, I'm probably gonna do it again this year. Imbolc is a great time to focus on dairy. Again, we're talking about when milk production was starting again. So in order to, kind of honor that, we may not have sheep of our own. If you do, that's awesome. But alas, I am sheepless. But we can still kind of, use dairy or milk in our practice, whether that be an offering or we use it in our kitchen. If you are like me, dairy doesn't necessarily agree with me. Butter's cool, but like milk itself, I'm like, almond milk, but you can still kind of use those substitutes in the same way. Some other symbols that you might want to include are candles and flames. So Brigid is really associated with that element of fire, and having that, either a candle for her or just candles in general on your Imbolc altar is traditional and very much recommended. You might also want to include seeds, a Brigid's cross, images of snakes or serpents, which I'm very excited about. You might also want to include images of sheep or deer, other sort of like farm animals that might be, beginning to show signs of pregnancy right now for the springtime. I would also include any sort of white flowers and snowflakes, maybe stars, the sun, as well as evergreen trees. Another really common symbol associated with Imbolc is water, and I think I said snow earlier, but those things are very much associated as well. So maybe having the symbol of a snowflake or icicles, something like that would be, perfectly fine. But whatever you guys end up doing, I just encourage you to be creative, because witchcraft is just a fantastic way to allow yourself to really connect with your world in a creative way that serves you, right? Now for my wonderful green witches, let's talk about some of the herbs that are associated with this holiday. Now, similar to Yule, there weren't like a ton of herbs. I feel like, we were talking about pine and cinnamon and evergreen and stuff like that. And a lot of those are going to carry over. So definitely, the cinnamon, nutmeg kind of thing. But it's also a great time to start connecting with herbs that either we have saved from the last year or, herbs that we are looking forward to growing in the future. So that's kind of where seeds are coming from. A lot of people bless seeds for Imbolc, but you might also want to include things such as cinnamon, cedar, angelica, chamomile. I would even say lavender, or anything that you personally use to cleanse your space. Again, because new beginnings and cleansing are all very much associated with Imbolc. Another one that is very much associated with this holiday is dandelion, because it is all about wish granting, making wishes and setting intentions. So I love dandelions, and I'm hoping to collect lots of them this year. Now, finally, for all of my wonderful crystal witches, you might want to include crystals on your altar such as amethyst, moonstone, silver, as well as any sort of white crystals. I use a lot of selenite and clear quartz, as well as citrine for Imbolc as well. So that's kind of representative of the sun, which is, returning to the world as we are getting further and further from the winter solstice and closer to the summer solstice. Now, in terms of activities and spell work that you can do for Imbolc, again, I cannot stress how important it is to clean and cleanse your space. I think that there's such a I think people sometimes can overlook that, but it is really, really important, especially in my practice. But this is also a really great time to cleanse and consecrate any gardening tools that you might be using for the year. In the springtime, it's a great time to start planning your garden, which is what I'm going to be doing. It's a great time to begin any sort of major spiritual workings or spiritual journeys. I know that sometimes people, again, use Samhain as a time to begin, spiritual things, especially related to witchcraft. But if you're like me and I kind of like to follow the regular calendar, Imbolc is a good time for that as well. I encourage you to learn more about Brigid and, really learn her mythology, maybe create something, in honor of her. She is a smith and a poet. So if you are a jewelry maker or maybe a writer, I would encourage you to flex your skills with your craft, as well as any artist who is out there. You don't necessarily have to be one of those two things. But yes, if that doesn't interest you, maybe just having a bonfire and just taking that time to pause and appreciate where we are in this time of year. You know what I mean? There is, as a reminder, it is still winter time, and I know it's dark out and cold out and dreary and that. So don't, put too much pressure on yourself. to celebrate this holiday. If you're not feeling up to it, you are never obligated, and no one's going to judge you for, like, you know, not being the perfect witch if you're like, hey, Imbolc. No, I used to actually not celebrate it at all, but as I've definitely learned to appreciate it, so I hope you do too. So that is our little video all about Imbolc. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know it was a little bit of a longer one, but I love talking about the holidays. I love celebrating. It's just so fun. And I'm so grateful that, you know, I was able to talk with you guys today. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. But other than that, I'll see you in the next one.